Welcome to another Codings Talk Nooner. I'm Jim Kunkel, and today we're diving into a topic that sits at the foundation of every technical discipline, every production environment, and every quality-driven organization: the importance of industry standards. Standards are the quiet force that keeps processes predictable, communications clear, and outcomes consistent. They reduce variation, they protect customers, and they give teams a shared language for what good actually looks like. And yet, despite how essential they are, standards are often misunderstood, they're overlooked, or they're treated like paperwork instead of the strategic tools that they really are. To help me unpack this, I'm joined by somebody who lives and breathes operational excellence, Kenneth Welch, Lean Six Sigma Blackbelt and Production Shift Supervisor. He brings a frontier or front line of perspective of how standards shape performance, reduce waste, and also create stability across any industry. His experience is disciplined, his high precision, and working in environments, it makes him the perfect guest to explore why standards matter and what happens when organizations fail to uphold them. We're going to talk about clarity, communication, competency, and culture, because standards aren't just documents. They're behaviors, they're expectations, and they're the backbone of quality. Let's go ahead and get started. Kenneth, welcome.
Thank you. Very glad to be here. Been a fan of yours for a while.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and when we first talked about this, it's something near and dear to my heart because it's so, like you said, it's the foundation. It's the foundation of which everything else can be built. So it's really important that that it's set right. It's like your foundation of your house. It's got to be solid.
So I obviously provided a little bit of detail about yourself, but if you could maybe go in a little bit more depth and detail about your Six Sigma experience and what type of roles that you've kind of done related to working in and around standards.
Okay, so I started my career at Michelin. It's a world known, well known company, and I started there working on the floor, worked my way up, worked there for 23 years. Unfortunately, the plant that I worked at shut down, and I had a transition, and I went back to school. That's where I got my Six Sigma. I went back to school, and then I started working at a Send Cut Send, and that's where I really understood what Michelin taught, because we had such a good foundation there. And I've brought that with me to Send Cut Send, and it's just really, it's shown me the importance of that standard and how it builds the whole team and the whole infrastructure. So that's where I've started, and that's what I've brought with me.
Yeah, and when we really think about what standards, the broadest sense and the definition, they are industry agreed upon rules, and also what certain aspects of work looks like. It could be anything from production, could be quality. Let me get your perspective of why standards are truly a backbone for process control and also related to operational excellence.
Well, the way I see it is, without your standards, you can't have any of that, because otherwise it's just chaos. I can make a paper airplane, you can make a paper airplane, but they're not the same. I'm left-handed. I assume you're right-handed. Things are a lot different with us. And so if there's no standard there, there's no consistency. And that's a whole. And without consistency, you can't have your operational excellence. You can't have more stuff going on top of that. You've got to have the standard, the baseline. That's what standard is. It's the baseline. It's what is acceptable. And you've got to have that, or else you can't build upon that.
That's a great point. When you think about it related to standards, they offer a shared language that really enables, like you said, consistency, and really consistency across any discipline. So when we think about standards, they're going to be specific to certain industries, but they are all performing the same role and responsibility to help guide people and also be ultimate outcome of what things look like. When it comes to the existence of standards, My mindset all the time is that they provide predictability, reliability, and also trust. Um, how do customers, you work with clients and customers, and also obviously your company of stakeholders internally, how do they rely on standards to know what they're getting?
Well, that's where standards are. It tells the customers, the stakeholders, everything what they're getting. Perfect example. If you're going down the road and you want to get a hamburger, uh, if you stop at McDonald's, you know exactly what you're getting. No matter where you are in the country, you stop at McDonald's, you know what you're getting, and that's what you want too. You want reliability and consistency. It doesn't matter what McDonald's you go to, it's the same. And that's what you want in any industry. It's the same thing every time. And once your customers and your stakeholders understand that's what they're getting every time, it gives them confidence in you and your product. And that's the bottom line. That's what you want. It also helps your team. It helps your team understand they have guide rails to show them how to get to their end product. And that's what we all want. It's easier, it's better, it's safer. So that's how important standards are.
Yeah, they really, in a way, they build trust, like you said, in the products, the services, and also the companies that are producing, goods and services and things like that. So let's talk about standards and when they come for use related to quality and also continuous improvement. Now, you being a black belt with Lean Six Sigma, that is an important element related to working in and around standards as well. How do standards and Lean Six Sigma, how do they work together to reduce defects and also eliminate or minimize waste?
Well, standards are the baseline. It's not the end goal, it's the baseline. And so you have to look at it as though, okay, I go out there, I do this by my standard, and then I look at the deviation and stuff. Can I make it better? Is the standard, can the standard be better? The standard can move. 1 week it can be here, next week can be here. And that's where the black belt comes in. It's reassess. It's go back and look at it again, and it's build upon build, and that's where that standard comes in. Like I said, it's the baseline. It moves too. If this week is 25 and next week's 30, that's a good thing. It can move.
Yeah, and I think working also too related to Lean Six Sigma and also related to standards, that the standards also too really help a company and even the customer itself to really kind of measure, performance and identify gaps, be it quality, maybe on the producer side being for production or whatever aspect of fulfillment too as well. Now, when it comes to continuous improvement, how do standards kind of improve the cycles, the plan, the do, the check, and the act when it comes to improvement cycles?
Well, like I said, you're going along, and the standard is your baseline. And then once you plan for it and you act, you see where the variation is, and you try to get the variation out of it, and you just keep moving on and on and on. But like I said, your standard is just your baseline, and it can keep moving. That's the way I look at it. That's the way I see it. It's just how you keep improvement. Continuous improvement is just continuous. You just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, years ago, I'll go way back in the 90s, I had gone through Kaizen, which is focused on continuous improvement. So, I have some relatability to all that you're talking about from my past training. Standards also really provide a communication framework because the standards really, through consensus work and industry best practices, they really eliminate anything that's unclear, really, and misinterpretation. They really kind of say, this is how good should look, or this is how things should be, but also to kind of dig into trying to address any misinterpretations that might exist in any particular industry. Now, in your past work, how do standards, how they align with the teams, the departments, And then also any external partners that you're working with.
So in my past job, I worked at Michelin, and it's a world organization. And so, no joke, I don't speak Italian at all. I barely speak English, but we're going along, and I train people from Italy, and they had their book of standards, and I had my book of standards, and I could point to step one or step two, and they could read along with me, and they understood exactly what I meant, even though I didn't speak Italian, and they didn't speak Hick like I speak, but we understood exactly. Is a whole bunch of yes and no's, but step one is step one is step one, and step no matter what language. So that's how we could do that. Uh, it just blew my mind that we could get along and I could train somebody. We didn't speak the same language, but we did because we understood the same standard, and that was the big thing. And I've seen that from Michelin. I've seen it from Sitka Send. Everywhere I ever worked, the standard was so important and so foundational to what we're doing.
Yeah, and the thing too, I point out that you can have more country-based standards. You can have regional standards. You can have like ISO, have global standards.
Right.
And looking at on the ISO side, for me, it really kind of helped set a shared definition. ISO, this is what it says, and it's global, right? So it's for everybody. And it also lays out the criteria and really kind of helps prevent any type of confusion. And I think it helps streamline collaboration as well. So I'm a big proponent, obviously, for global standards that are there. Where the trip up can be is if you have a standard that's more North America centric, and then you've got a European standard, and you've got an Asian standard. You've got all these different areas that might be exactly the same, but maybe a little different. And obviously that can be a little bit of a trip up. When it comes to training, also competency, and then worker, or let's say personnel performance, how, in your view, how do standards work more proficiently when people know how to interpret the standard, understand the standard, but also apply them consistently?
So it gives them confidence. Once you understand what you're trying to produce, and what you're trying to do, and how you're doing it, it gives you so much more confidence. You're not out there blind. Like I keep saying, it's your guide rails. It gets you on the road. It gets you guide rails. It gets you where you need to go, and you don't have to think, well, do I need to do this, or no, I need to do that? It's right there laid out for you, and it gives the operator, the team member, confidence, and that's worked a lot. Not too long ago, I had an employee break down, cry. He did not understand where we were at, and I said, "Hey, listen. Go through the standard, read this step by step, and see if you understand it." And he did. He's like, "Oh, okay." I said, "Hey, we're all learning. We're all doing this. If you go through this, it tells you step by step what to do." And once he did that, great. He's one of my better team members now, because he understood, hey, rely on that standard, rely on that. That's your Bible, I guess you'd say. That's where we that's the whole thing. It gave him the confidence, and it brought him around a lot. So that's where it really can help your team.
Yeah, and another area too comes to if you get professional certifications or you're going for advanced training, how standards will roll into the training programs, the certification programs, and also too, as a company, if you have a developmental program related to competency, that also comes to play where you're incorporating those standards in there. You're benefiting the employee, you're benefiting your operation, but you're also creating someone who down the road might be elevated into an advanced role. Now they have the foundation and understand how standards really apply. And the other aspect too is I think the interrelationship that happens between different industries, because you might have some overlay here and there. And I can say, like, for example, predominantly I work in the protective coatings industry. We have certain standards that we follow. And then we work with like American Petroleum Institute, for example. API has standards, and some of their standards tie into coating inspection or internal linings and things like that. So sometimes you have that cross let's say, cross-pollination of standards, where you might have a memorandum of understanding where there's a collaboration, joint standards, and things like that. So that also ties a lot of different industries together as well. Now, when it comes to the empowerment of your technicians, your operators, your professionals, how do standards kind of help reinforce that empowerment?
Well, the standard is there, like I said, it's there for a guideline. And if they're doing it by the standard, it shows, hey, what they're doing is right. And as they go along, if the standard needs to be changed, it can be changed. If they come and figure out a better way of doing something, it can change. And it empowers them to do the right thing. It empowers them to do the hard stuff and make it not quite so hard, because they know it's got their backing, it's got their back. And that's a lot of it. It gives them confidence to know they're doing the right thing, to get the right product out. It's just better for everybody. I don't know how else better to say it like that. It's just better for everybody.
Yeah, you're 100% on the money on that. The other aspect too is if you're a quality control, quality assurance, like let's say you're doing inspection or you're doing a product review, coming out of a project review before you kind of sign off on the end of the project saying everything's good to go. It also provides, really, it's empowerment for you, because you could utilize the standards. I don't want to say it as an enforcement, but you utilize those standards to fall back on, saying,
right,
based on my analysis and this data, we did not meet this standard requirement.
right.
Therefore, there needs to be a corrective action. There needs to be, maybe there could be a potential change order happens,
right,
or a rejection, right? So all these things happen. So as a professional now, you're it's not your call. Your data based off the standard, this is the baseline. And again, we're talking about a baseline standard. You can always overperform the standard,
exactly,
but at bare minimum, you're maintaining the minimum of that standard, right? So if you're not meeting the minimum of that, again, that's showing that there's a deficiency in work or service or production. So again, that will help to provide a little bit of authority based on your decision and your position on things. Kenneth, we're moving into a more deeper digital age right now, and we're also looking at automation, anything from artificial intelligence to processes and procedures that are a little bit more going to be more robotic with AI and all these other things happening, even like digital twins and all these things are happening right now. When it comes to digital workflows and automation and data systems, how do you see, based off your opinion, do you feel that modern standards will be able to easily incorporate into digital workflows and all the AI and everything, or does there need to be a revision of all the standards?
Well, the way I look at it is this: I think the new technology and stuff will really help. It will give those standards to you in the palm of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times I've been out on a job site or somewhere in a shop and go, oh gosh, I'm gonna go back to the shop and get the standard. Well, no, you don't. It's right here on your phone. It's right there on a laptop. It's right there on your computer screen. It's right there with you. It's mobile. It does you no good to have your standard in an office in a file cabinet gathering dust. You need it with you. And that's another thing, it needs to be a living document. It needs to change all the time. And that's where the newer stuff happens, but the other part of it is if the standard is wrong or anything like that, it can really change it in a moment. So it's really important to make sure our standards are right and make sure our standards are documented right, because with the digital age and stuff, garbage in, garbage out is no joke, and it's so quick now. Used to it take a long time for the bad things to happen. Now it can happen quick. So you got to make sure that your standards are correct and make sure that everybody understands the standards. So that it's really enforced and the right standards are getting put out there, because it doesn't take long to have a whole lot of bad stuff to get out there nowadays.
Yeah, and the more I research into digital twins, so for those watching, Basically, a digital twin would be, let's say you have a piece of equipment. You actually have a digital version of that.
Right.
And with that digital, that digital copy of it, what you're able to do is you're able to kind of operate it, run it, and
Right.
it will give you predictive information. It's like running the actual physical piece of equipment.
Right.
With that, because of digital twins, what's happening is there's a growing push now. Instead of having, as we talked about, all the different, all industries are like this. They have their like, again, like I said, North American standards, global standards, and things like that. There is a stronger push now for unified global standards,
Yep.
to have it one standards for industries that are globally accepted and utilized, just to keep things consistent
Right.
and keep things predictable, based on where we're heading with digital transformation and everything like that. Let me ask you your perspective on digital transformation, especially when it comes to a lot of companies these days, both in the industrial sector, even in my industry, and on the protective coating side. There is still a lot of analog aspects. There's still a lot of the old school ways of doing things. When it comes to digital transformation, in your opinion, do you feel that there is a need when it comes to standards to have more clarity and also consistency related to digital transformation?
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. But because the digital transformation is coming, is so quick. So it's just so quick. Everything that we do now is just going to be multiplied by 10 or 20 or 30 times. So you got to get those standards uh, rock solid. You got to get them very clear, so that it's easily understood. Because instead of giving it to one person, you're giving it to 10, 20, 40, 60, 80 people at one time. So it's got to be rock solid. It's got to be clear. It's got to be concise. It's got to be, it's got to be right. And it it's just got to be right.
Yeah, it definitely has to be right. So let's talk about the the evolution of standards. How they're now starting to look to keep pace with innovation that's happening. Um, Traditionally, what you would have, and let's go back decades ago, you could have a revision of a standard that's out there, and there's really no big deviation. Typically, most standards, every, let's say, 5 years or so, unless there's a revision, it has to happen. They get looked at, they get reaffirmed, they continue to move on. Today, here in 2026, what's happening is that cycle of 5 year review theoretically probably is starting to get shorter and shorter and
Oh yeah,
shorter,
oh yeah,
because innovation, as we all see around us, especially like AI, for example, what used to take a year. We remember the Will Smith eating spaghetti, right?
right,
Where it would be all Morphe and everything like that. But we're finding right now with digital transformation initiatives and AI and intelligent technologies is that things are changing every 6 months. Well, that cycle is going to start changing, where it's going to be every 4 months, every
right,
2 months, every month. And obviously, standards have to keep pace with that. And so we might have literally standards that maybe they're getting revised every 6 months, a
yeah,
year, or reaffirmed at least, to be able to say it's pacing with innovation.
right,
Um, I think we all agree that standards have to adapt to technologies, advanced materials that are coming in, and also processes and methods that are coming because of advanced robotics and also automation. There is a tension I still see that exists between legacy standards and also modern expectations. You as a black belt, you as a continuous improvement person, how would someone manage that tension between those legacy standards and also what modern expectations are when it comes to tech development?
well, okay, so I'm at a certain age. I'm 54, and I remember a rotary phone. Everybody and their dog has a cell phone now. It's just commonplace. It's just how we do things. But can you imagine for 1 minute having a standard based on a rotary phone? 10, 20 years ago, that was the standard, a rotary phone. And now we have mobile phones. That's how far we've come in quite a short time. And that's why it's important to understand our standards have to change. Because can you imagine trying to do what we do now with our cell phones, trying to do that with a rotary phone, or trying to tell somebody, hey, with your rotary phone, do X, Y, Z? They look at you like you're crazy, so that's why it's got to change. It's got to change, and you got to stay with it. You don't want to be the guy in the shop, hey, get your rotary phone out and blah, blah, blah. No, you got to be with the times. You got to understand the technology, and you got to adapt with the technology, adapt or die. And that's where it's at.
Yeah. So everyone knows, prior to us going live, I had a conversation with Kenneth about my experience sometimes out in the field on projects where, could be on a tank, I could be on a bridge structure, I could be, the refinery. And I asked the question is, where's your book of standards? There's standards in this, the specification, project requirements and everything. And it'd be like, well, it's in the truck. Where's the truck? It's out in the parking lot. And well, you can't get to it. So what happens when you have to refer to the standard?
Right.
Now you don't have it. And, Kenneth and I were talking about how things move to tablet. Now you can get access to standards on tablets, which is great and everything like that. But the thing with it is standards, unfortunately, I think in far too many industries are reactive and not proactive.
Yes.
And this is where things have to change,
yes.
especially as we go into further digital transformation. But also, too, the standards really help with the continuous improvement frameworks.
Yep.
Because companies and entities should be on top of standards because it can help them update themselves. So maybe they can make an operational change. Maybe they're doing something a certain way that there's a better way. And obviously, I think by keeping on top of those standards proactively can help not only during the project, but help in the process and also production and everything and operation too as well.
Right.
I think you agree with that, correct?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
Now let's talk about the cost of ignoring or deviating from standards. You knew I was going there.
Oh yeah,
because it happens far too often, right?
Yeah.
So there are always what I call universal consequences. And a past job I had, hold on one second. I worked for a fabricator, and we would do anything from, punching stuff out, producing stuff, powder coating, welding, all bending, all these different things like that.
Yep.
So some of the consequences that can happen if you're not really following process procedures and especially standards is you get defects, right?
Oh, you get more than that.
Right?
Yeah.
You get safety risk, right?
Exactly. And that's where it boils down to, there's a production risk and there's a safety risk. And, sorry to say, I've seen people hurt. I've seen people hurt bad because they didn't follow their standards, and they're there to make sure the product's right and you go home safely. And the same way you come in the door, yes, the product's, important too, but basically I don't want to see me get hurt. And so that's why it's so important that their standards are just nailed in and they're right. You have the safety standards, you have product standards, you have, operational standards, you have all these standards there for a reason. And like you said, to me, it really hits home. I don't want nobody to get hurt on my shift or anywhere. And so that's why it's very, very, very important that we follow our standards. They're for a reason, they're your guardrails. I'll say it 1,000 times, they're your guardrails.
Yeah, and I go back to, again, they're a minimum baseline, right? You can always exceed the standard.
Oh,
yeah. Again, and a lot of times, obviously, that could cost a little bit more money and things like, I understand that, right?
Right.
But the other aspect, we talked about defect, safety risk, is that I've seen companies excuse inefficiencies.
Yep.
And then my best one is when you see customer dissatisfaction, customer has a problem with the product. And then typically the answer is, well, it's good enough.
Yeah, no, it's not. That's the thing. That's the thing. Your standard should be your baseline. It shouldn't be good enough. It should be what you paid for or what you expect. This is what it is. And if you get better, awesome. But you shouldn't be, get what you get, throw a fit. No, it's a standard. If if you order something from Amazon, this is what you expect. You know, you don't want to order something from Amazon, getting something from Temu. You know,
Yeah.
you want what you want. You know.
Because I think about, like I work on the more on the pipeline, new construction pipeline side, and you've got coatings that are going to go into buried pipeline, and the aesthetics of what the pipe looks like before it goes in the ground is super important to the end user. But you're like, well, it's going to get buried. No one's going to see it underground. And again, like I say, that also is a disconnect as well.
Right.
The biggest thing I think is the reputational damage, because if you become that it's good enough, or you're missing all the time, you're going to lose that customer, you're going to lose that client, and then you're going to get known in the industry as don't go to them, because they're not a quality shop, or they're not a quality contractor, or whatever it might be.
Right.
I'm not going to ask you to share any unless you want to genericize them, any type of examples that you might have. And again, you might not want to do this. It's cool if you don't want to talk about it, but have you had any examples that you could give out without revealing anybody, protecting the innocent, let's say? And how any deviations that created a chaos event or forced a waste event?
So where I used to work, we're going along, and we made tires, and we're going along, and we made, I want to say 3,000 or 4,000 tires wrong. And instead of saying, they're good enough. So I'll just be honest with you. On every Michelin tire, there's a stamp of a Michelin man holding his hand up like this with a thumb. Well, one of the standard, or not standard, but one of the marks called a mandatory mark. It has to be on there. Well, that thumb got rubbed off. It made no difference in that tire at all. At all. It was all only aesthetic. But it was 3,000 tires that were scrapped because of that thumb. That's how important it was for Michelin to make sure it was our standard. I don't work for them no more, but I'll tell you, the only thing I will buy is the Michelin tire, because that's how important those standards are. 3,000 tires. That's quite a lot. But it was just because the thumb was on the Michelin man with a hand up, waving at you, was gone. So that's how important it was to do Michelin. And that's why Michelin has such a great brand recognition, because they know, hey, they're Michelin tire.
Yeah.
And that's how important their standard is. And that's something that's really ingrained in me. Even though I don't work there no more, it's still ingrained in me. And that's something I carry with me at all times.
Yeah. And think about that. That is an internal standard. It's not, It's not an industry standard, right? So in really kind of thinking about standards, they are not bureaucracy. A lot of people, I think, still unfortunately view it as bureaucracy, right? Oh, we got to follow this, we got to do that. And they're really risk mitigation.
Exactly.
And that's the mindset. If anybody watching this live or in the replay, if you walk away, the bare minimum thing you want to take away, standards are important because they will reduce or control your risk, the risk mitigation. So think of it that way. I think you agree with me on that, right, Kenneth?
Yeah. So what Michelin did, and they did this excellent job, is they got everybody, when you first start, they got you out there and they put you in a car, and they had the worst tires in the world on them. And they took you out about 2 miles away from the plant, and they stopped. They said, okay, you saw how crappy your road and everything. Imagine this is your family now. Your family is broken down on the side of the road, and your family's lives are riding on the tires you make. And they hit me. They're like, oh my gosh, you're exactly right. Somebody's lives are on the line. So that's why we have those standards here. That's why they were so respect to spec, we called it. Respect to spec. And that's why we did that so well, is because we understood somebody's lives were on the line, and it was our families. And that's why you're out there, and you're thinking it's hot, I'm tired, blah, blah, blah. It's okay. It's good. No, it's not. Those standards are there for a reason. it might not protect your life, but it might protect your loved one's life or someone else's loved one's life. And that really knocked it home for me. And the 23 years I was there, every day I thought, it could be my family out there, and that could be someone else's family out there, and those lives matter, of course. And that's what brought it home for me. Mission did an excellent job of that, and I carry that still. Even at Sin Cut Sin now, standards are so important, not just for me, but for the end user. We have people using Sin Cut Sin for the rockets, Tesla, SpaceX, anything and everything. But people's, I'm not going to say they're all lives, or on the line like that, but it's very important.
Yeah. You're so true about that. And you were talking about respecting the spec, respecting the standards. Let's close out this live stream and talk about, building the culture when it comes to it. You yourself, when it comes to operational, you're a leader in operations. How do you really kind of help within an organization build that culture of standards?
You gotta have the buy-in. You gotta have the operators with you, your team members, understand why it's so important that the standards are met. It's not just for a checkbox. It's not just for production. It's because that's the baseline, and everything else goes on that. You gotta have buy-in from your team and everybody up below you and above you. It's got to be priority one. That's the way I look at it, and that's the way I go about it. It's like, okay, guys, this is our standard. This is why we do it, and give them the why. That's so important. People don't understand the why. Well, just because it says that, no, it says that because of X, Y, Z. It has to be that way because of X, Y, Z. Oh, okay, I get that now. Make them understand the why. That's very important for me too.
Yeah, I like the priority one, because, standards have to be made part of everyday behavior. They're not just documentation.
Exactly.
And a takeaway really for everyone watching this live stream and also the replay is that you must change your mindset, if you're not already there, that standards are a strategic advantage when they're utilized, right? When they're utilized, where they're embraced and everything. But also importantly, when they're understood and also when they're applied consistently.
Right.
Kenneth, in closing out this live stream, is there anything that we did not talk about that you would want to leave with the viewers?
No, like I said, just standards are very important, and it's the baseline. It's the starting point. It's not the ending point. It's the starting point. I don't know what else to say. It's where we all need to start at.
Yeah. And Steve Collins posted here, Jim, we did what we called what if. Contractor and me would look at one step, and then we would look to see if we can change that step to make it safer and better. Steve, very good. I love that.
Yeah.
That is a great way to do that. Tie also to the contractors into the process too.
Yeah. So with us, what we do a lot of times is, we're going along and I'll do a walk on the floor. And when I do, sometimes there are people and processes that are getting changed a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, there's the Apple Cart thing or Apple Box thing. If they're having used something outside the standard and everything, maybe the standard's not right. Maybe it needs to be changed. And at that point, you need to back up, look at the standard and say, okay, does it need to be changed a little bit? It can be moved. It can be moved. If a Apple Box is needed, then maybe an Apple Box is needed. Maybe the standard shouldn't be the standard. It should be moved again. Yeah. It's gotta be a living document. And that's what people don't understand. It's not just, this is back from 1953. No, it needs to be keep going all the time.
Yeah. We were also talking earlier. Sometimes when I've seen, it's not more frequent now, but it was in the past, let's say 10, 15 years ago, more prevalent, where like we were talking about revisions of standards, where people will literally put into a specification, they'll put the standard and they'll put in the revision date. Yeah. And I like to remind people that you want to keep it pretty general, right? To say refer to this particular standard. Don't put all the extra detail on the revision date, because what happens is if you have a certain standard that's been revised 3 or 4 times before here's your project going on, you're theoretically saying to the contractor. Now, contractors will say, hey, we're going to follow the latest version of it.
Right,
But
right.
theoretically, they could go back and use 3 or 4 revisions in the past, right?
Right.
So be very mindful too when it comes to specifying and also invoking standards and things like that. Kenneth, what a great conversation to have on this topic. We realize how important it is across so many different industries. People are going to want to get connected with you, follow you, all that kind of good stuff like that. How can they do that?
Just on LinkedIn. That's the best way to do it, I think. Just connect with me and we'll go from there.
And then do you do, I think, a newsletter on LinkedIn? Is that correct?
I do.
Oh.
It's small tale. The canary in the coal mine. I put one out every other week.
Perfect. Everyone, thank you so much for joining in and also commenting. I do greatly appreciate the support for Coatings Talk as a series, both in articles, videos, and this live stream. And everyone, have a good rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning, no matter where in the world you're watching this stream.